Barnaby Joyce, as we just mentioned, has joined growing calls from business groups to increase Newstart. The former Deputy Prime Minister has revealed he kills his own meat, buys the cheapest groceries and turns off his heater in the middle of the night to save money and support his two families.
Nationals MP Barnaby Joyce joins us live. Good morning to you, Barnaby. Thanks for being here with us this morning. Well, on the front page of the Courier Mail this morning, it says that you're skint. Are you?
No, I'm not. I'm on a very, very good salary, incredibly good salary. And probably by my own circumstances, it's spread pretty thin. And Peter, what I'm trying to do, if anything, is just emphasise that if for me it's spread thin on an incredibly good salary, how is it going for other people? It must be incredibly tough. You know, I've got the capacity to always make ends meet, and I do that. But Peter, I for the life of me can't work out how someone can survive on $280 a week. You'd be up for 100 and, you know, $200 of it straight away for rent. And then you've got to get by on 80. Go to a grocery shop, see what you buy on that. I mean, I suppose as the exercise, I do go through and try and work out, you know, how's the cheapest way to live. You can't have power bills that are $500-600 if you're going with that. You're going to have to cut down. You're going to have to find somewhere, because we've made because of our desire to cool the planet from Canberra, the price of power's gone through the roof. Fuel hasn't kept up with the CPI. Power has way beyond the CPI. You know, I think that in the National Party, we've got the poorest seats. You know, the richest people are represented by the Greens, then the Libs, then the Labor. We look after the poorest. And we've got to somehow ventilate some of their issues. I think it's incumbent upon us.
Have your current circumstances given you new perspective? And does it highlight that maybe some in your situation, backbenchers or ministers on even bigger wages, are just simply out of touch?
Well, it certainly hasn't given me less, Laura, let's put it that way. And, you know, as I said, I'm on a very, very good salary and circumstances of my own doing. But it is natural enough that, yes, it's spread vastly thinner than it otherwise would, and you've got to make the decisions that tie to your budget. Now, that is a decision that the vast majority of families do, and if, as I said in the article, away from the headline, which is a bit of an eye grabber, is that it'd have to give you a little bit more humility, and I'm happy to have that, and I think it's really important in all your life that every now and then you get knocked down a bit so you can just get it back together again and wake up to yourself about how other people are living.
Well, I mean, everybody does it tough. We all sort of cut back every now and again, Barnaby. So just what are some of the things that you have to do to trim corners?
Well, like everybody else, you know, you rent a house that you can afford. You make the bed. You don't extravagant on groceries. I'm lucky. I live out in the country. I've got my own sheep, so I kill my own meat, and that saves an awful lot of money because meat's incredibly expensive. You don't live without, but you're very conscious of what you do, and I'm on an incredibly good salary. I say it over and over again because otherwise people just say you're full of it, mate. You're on $211,000 a year, for God's sake. And you know I get that, but you got to. It's not just for me. I split it between. I cover all my responsibilities, and that, of course, then you live with what you've got left.
Yeah, and turning the heater off in the middle of the night is a pretty extreme example of that as well. You've spoken just then about, you know, Canberra's quote-unquote desire to cool the planet. Your government has been in power for 6 years. There's been no huge drop in power prices. Does that keep you awake at night?
Look, I wrote a book, as you know, Laura, Weatherboard and Iron, about people doing it really tough because I think these people don't have their issues ventilated. They're less likely than most to have political representation because people. What has
your government done about making power more affordable?
Well, I'm always part of the agenda of trying to get more baseload onto the system. We have to go forward with that divestiture power. We must do it. Sure. Now they're talking about divestiture powers in the media.
Why has that been delayed?
I think that. Well, my job as a backbencher is not to come up with reasons as to why it's delayed. It's to drive agendas, Laura, so that these things go forward. And, you know, I think, the Labor Party didn't support divestiture powers. The Labor Party want a 50% renewable target. And I represent people who have to pay the price on this. And they're just, you know, they just don't get by. They don't worry about turning off the heaters at night because they're on wood fires.
Hey, Barnaby, just I've just got something I'd like to ask you about. I mean, you talk about there's a big push for nuclear at the moment, which doesn't really appear to be getting anywhere. But why not refocus attention to the Bradfield scheme? I know that you've been a passionate supporter about that in the past, because you're kind of ticking a lot of boxes off with that one, right? I mean, there's jobs there. It could be part of a big infrastructure project, and you're also providing water to areas that really need it.
And you're providing jobs for the people who build it, Peter, and that's why it's so vitally important that we get these infrastructure projects moving ahead. Yeah, I do believe that the Bradfield scheme, not taking water to Lake Eyre, but taking water into the western rivers, ultimately into the Darling, which would help with the Menindee Lakes. I think this is incredibly important to develop our nation. And not just our nation, Peter, but the world's population is about to hit 8 billion people. It's heading towards 10 billion by 2055, I believe. And we're going to have a responsibility not just to ourselves but to the world to try and feed more. Otherwise, people are just going to starve. And we can do so much with our nation, so much with our water security, if we choose to do it. You know, you've got Sydney now on water restrictions.
Well, the Nationals, Barnaby, the Nationals and the Liberals seem like they're not on the same page. I've just got to bring this up with you very quickly. Susan Lee seems to have knocked on the head today, lifting this ban on nuclear. I mean, you and your colleagues have been pushing for it. Your coalition partners saying, no, we're not even going to look at it.
Well, the issue is we don't really have a ban on nuclear at all. We've got a nuclear reactor. It's bang smack in the middle of Sydney. So we do have one. And houses there the other day, land blocks. Laura, were going $1 million a pop. So I don't think the people are too concerned about their proximity to Lucas Heights. We dig it out of the ground, we semi-process it into the yellow cake, we take it through the middle of town, we load it onto ships, we've got a reactor in the middle of town, and in South Australia they're talking about taking back the scraps and burying them again. So we are in the nuclear industry, we're just not in the part that generates the power, and I suppose that's the question that I think needs to be answered. And even if we choose not to do it, we shouldn't have impediments for doing it in our nation when we believe that it's morally just that we sell it to everybody else for them to use it. I think we should be at the forefront of this industry, selling the technology to other people in the world to use it as safely as possible.
The French are certainly doing it at the moment, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.